So now that we're in Octane, we're going to go over some just basic Octane settings. So we already made a glossy material. I'm just going to click that node and just delete it. So here is Octane all fresh. So let's go ahead and grab, we're going to right click in this gray area right here. We're going to go to geometry and add a mesh. This will give us a mesh node, but first we have to plug a mesh in. I'm going to go to my Octane folder. I'm just going to grab my reptile mesh by double clicking. And now we have a reptile mesh OBJ in our scene. If I click that, that's actually going to, kind of hard to explain, this mesh OBJ has a camera assigned already. We are going to get into render targets in just a little bit, but for now just know that if you middle mouse drag in your window, and I'm just scrolling out basically, you're going to start seeing your reptile, as well as if you middle mouse click and drag, you'll zoom in and out. Right click is pan, and then left click is rotate around your object. So between all three of those, you can just kind of navigate around your object here. So we've got a reptile mesh in there. Let's go ahead and assign a material to him. Now, he already has a material assigned to him, and if you look, if you roll over this little knob up here, you're going to see its initial shading group. That's the name of the shading engine that was assigned in Maya right here. So here's the Lambert 1. The initial shading group is the shading engine name, and that's what shows up in Octane. So by default, it comes in with a material assigned to it. So you can actually go in here, and you're going to see right now it has a diffuse material assigned. There's diffuse, glossy, and mix and portal we're going to skip, but specular assigned. So if I go up here to the diffuse color and I click in there and just change the color to a red, I have a diffuse red color assigned to that. If you want to, you can change that drop down to glossy, and now I have a glossy material. And you can see what happened was we picked up a spec and a roughness. So if I go in here, I can kill that spec, or I can crank it up. Same thing with the roughness. It's very rough now, very shiny. I can crank that roughness up, and it'll turn it a little bit more matte. Now, there's another way you can do it, and it's a little bit more visual, a little bit easier to kind of navigate. So I'm going to right click in here, go to materials, and we're just going to make a glossy material here. So if I click glossy material, you're going to see it switches views. And now we're just looking at a material ball. So let's talk a little bit about Octane material settings. The first one, if you go up here to the glossy material and you click on glossy material, you're going to see its options right here. If you change that to diffuse, it is now a diffuse material. All you have is diffuse and roughness. If you change it to glossy, now you have diffuse, roughness, and specular. And I'm just going to kind of zoom in here a little bit. So if we want to, I'm going to go ahead and change this color so you can kind of see a little bit better. So now it's like a red plastic. I can turn the specular down, and it kind of turns the specular to a lower value. The roughness, we can crank that up, and it'll make it more rough, or the surface less rough. So here it is really shiny. Index of refraction, we're pretty much going to leave alone, but you can go ahead and play with that as well. I'm going to go ahead and put that back at 1.3. And this is where you can plug in your bump, normal, and displacement, which we'll get to in a second. You can also go to specular, and this is going to be like a glass or a translucent type shader. So in here you can change the reflection amount up or down. You can change the transmission value. So now it's like a red translucent glass here. You can change the roughness. You can kind of make it a little bit rougher. And you're going to notice, just like in Keyshot, just like in iRay render, the longer you let it sit, the more it's going to iterate. So right now, if you look down here in this area, you're going to see a little counter going up to 500. These are values you can change, but basically it's going to max out once it hits that number. And the longer you let it sit, the more it's going to resolve the image. So you're getting a nice translucent gummy look now. So of course, as soon as I change any settings or move the camera, it's going to start over again. So you might want to set up a camera, which is what we're going to do in a bit. We got dispersion coefficient here, and I'm not going to go into a big involved conversation about all of these things, because frankly I don't know what they all mean. It's been a while since I've messed with this stuff, but feel free to go read the documentation and the white papers on all of this cool stuff. But for now we're going to switch this back to glossy. So because basically what we need is to plug in a diffuse, spec, and roughness from our exported maps.